welcome to episode 71 of React Native Radio. I'm your host, Nader Dabbit. Today, our special guest is Fabrizio Moscon of HoxFon. HoxFon is a React Native-based company out of London that Fabrizio started, and we're going to kind of discuss how to use Twilio and calling with React Native, because that's kind of what Fabrizio has been working on quite a bit, and he's actually developed a library. We're going to talk about that. But before we kind of get into the topic, I just want to go ahead and welcome you to the show, Fabrizio.
Hi, welcome everybody.
Before we do get into the actual topic, again, let's go ahead and talk a little bit about yourself. So how did you get into programming, and what kind of brought you to React Native?
Oh, that's easy. I've been programming since I was 15. So I really started with the website for the local community, the local council. Then I tried to have a couple of ventures with social networks style of application. At that time, PHP was big, so we were doing everything PHP and LAMP architecture. Then got into university, got a degree in computer science, tried to see where the web was going, and then took me to London, because that was after graduation in Italy, that was the closest place where you could have a job on the cutting edge of the web. And that went very well. So I passed from PHP to Node.js eventually during the years, and then touching Golang. And now it's been a year. I'm opening my own company, and because of that, I got into React Native big time. And as anybody knows, in React Native, if you want to have not only if you have an app, but if you want to have a business based on it, you have to study a lot inside out, every ticket, every pull request, not only of the core, but also of all the libraries in the community. Because of so HoxFon basically is a telephone app which allows you to buy numbers in many locations in the world. And the benefit of this is that they are traditional phone numbers which integrate perfectly with the traditional phone system, and they all work on your phone, so you can move freely within countries around the globe. And these numbers are kind of your point of presence in the location that you desire. So because of that, I had to integrate with the React Native Twilio native SDKs, Android and iOS, which actually Nadir had tried out in first experience. Because I think the only other contributors is you. But there were a few guys helping me with the iOS integration, which I'm very thankful for. Eventually, there were two attempts, I think, and that showed me the way to integrate. And basically, the job was pretty much wrapping all the system calls that the Twilio SDK does. So today, I think the status of the library is quite good. It's quite well. Something I will need to spend more time towards is in improving the integration on iOS for CallKit, which is not perfect right now. But apart from that, the library works very well. There are few customers and many testers on the HoxFon that makes call every day. And the library, particularly for React Native, is quite stable. There's not many problem on that, especially because of Twilio. The quality of service and the quality of call is exceptional. So everyone is very happy for that. That's what I've been doing for the past year.
Yeah, we actually did use your SDK, and we actually launched an app using that, and it's actually gone really well, and it's been in production now for at least 6 months now, 8 months, and it's actually been a success. We haven't had any problems with it really since we launched it. Getting everything kind of set up for the first time, if you've never done Twilio integration and if you've never done anything with React Native in that sense, it was kind of tough for me to get started because I don't really have a lot of experience doing calling. So you have to learn a lot of new stuff because it's just a new paradigm, I guess. But it did turn out really well. I think it's a really interesting library.
Very glad to hear that.
So what were you doing, I guess, before you kind of created this app and decided to go in this direction?
Well, my previous job, I was doing backend and a little bit of front end for a company which operates in on-demand service marketplace. So here in London, and I mainly was responsible for the whole backend architecture and the infrastructure. Eventually, because it was a small startup, I ended up doing a little bit of React. At the point, React was starting to get, I'm talking about maybe 3 years ago, React in London was starting to get quite popular. So we decided to give it a go, and we hired a couple of front-enders, and they did a very good job. And so we had the website in React at the point. We had an attempt to do an hybrid application for Android, which was basically doing something quite hacky, but in a way was kind of doing in principle what React Native is doing now. It's just it did not have any native binding. So basically, we were just wrapping a JavaScript bundle and ship it within a web view into a shell, an Android shell. But it was very difficult to make anything work in a nice way for the user with that paradigm. In principle, was a very good idea, but the result sometimes was a little bit clunky, was a little bit not really responsive. So that was one of the biggest complaint we received from users, and that eventually I think moved me to look into solution to improve that. And React Native at that time was just coming about, with some people talking about in conferences about it. And I thought to give it a go, and since then I've been completely in love with it. I think for a startup like we were, and for a startup that I'm running right now, I don't think most of the times you need to get stuff done and very fast. Not only for the competitors, I mean, but only for to keep up with the business needs and to keep up the developer motivations. Most of times you need a fast iteration cycle, and React Native just, in my opinion, that it does that very well. It gives you very, very fast tool to build and to experiment and to ship code that sometimes cuts in more than half the costs of first the cost of hiring people, finding them, retaining them, and most importantly the skill gap. You don't really have to find experts in Android or experts in iOS. You can rely on your React skills. So that is amazing.
So I guess if you didn't use React Native, what would be your second option? Would it have been I guess like maybe some type of Cordova implementation, since you'd worked with that like in the past?
Actually, if there wasn't React Native around, I don't think I would have built a company, to be honest. Because experience, we had few, feasibility study kind of discussions within the engineers in my past company, and I mean, a lot of people had experience with Cordova and PhoneGap and the Ionic framework, and overall they were not very, very pleased about that. So I think the fact that I decided to move into open my own company and making this phone app has been greatly influenced by the fact that React Native was a reality. If I wouldn't find it pleasant to work with and successful iterating and developing, I don't think I would have made a company, to be honest.
So can we hear about like what your stack is? Like what all are you using in your app other than Twilio as your service?
Sure. So the stack is I'm using React Navigation for the navigation part of it. I'm using Redux. The data structure is immutable, so I have to integrate a couple of libraries of that. I'm using Redux Offline, which I'm just integrating right now. What else? A bunch of libraries that are available from the community. For example, vector icons. For example, modals. Something to do very, very nice off-screen modals, which I use for after the call to display a small rating kind of things with star and possibility to give feedback. So that's kind of useful. What else? I think that so on the native side, I think the big one is Twilio for sure. Then you have all the boilerplate as you might refer to. For example, you need analytics, so I'm using Fabric and Answers for that. And then you need crash reports, so there's Firebase and Sentry integrated. One interesting integration that I used is Card.io and Stripe. So if you want to take payment, that is another very good module. And it was, I think so I started building everything in starting from one platform, which was Android, and eventually when it was time to integrate with iOS, I was very pleasantly surprised that it didn't take much of time to integrate it. So eventually, I think there was a good approach, because otherwise I would have ended up just fixing everything iteration after iteration twice. So I think overall that was a very good lucky choice to just try to build the majority of the architecture on one platform and then see what happens on the other. That was quite good. Also because I spent a good month just focusing on everything about Xcode integration and multiple environments on that part, and completely. So I was very focused on one specific job. So I guess if I have to do that again, I guess I'll repeat this strategy. Yeah, the architecture is quite big, so everything interacts with my server, and for that there is a module, an API module, which does automatic token refresh. So uses async storage for that. So it keeps a long-lived token and a short-lived token to make authenticated requests. And then there is a layer called services, which has a lot of things to do with the binding between these server APIs and the view itself. For the view, I divided everything in modules, whereas basically every screen has a module, and within the module there is a view which uses Redux, and then I have another bag of tools which is for the components, which where all the pure components resides. That's pretty much it.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, that's quite a bit. Just out of curiosity, how has your experience been with React Navigation so far?
It's been good. I think I'm a little bit looking around. Not around. I'm a bit anxious for what is going to happen to it, because I think it's been good 2 months that nobody makes a new release, and I can see reading here and there. I can see there are a few tickets that will really need some answer, but I think the maintainer, they must be busy somewhere else, obviously, because they've done an amazing job so far. So I think initially it was amazing, because I started with a navigation experiment and that was good, but was not really allowing me to do things that I wanted. And I think when React Native decided to remove it from the core, I decided to jump, because I wanted to update React Native, but I still wanted a navigation. And React Navigation was has been very good, especially for as a user experience. So you can really see visually the difference in performance. I think there are few bugs here and there, which I'm very confident the community and the maintainers will smooth. I think right now there are talks about the first release, the first stable release, and trying to understand what to cherry pick into it. But overall my experience has been very good. Also because you can find main examples around not only on the GitHub repository, but also around in other places like Blog, Medium, and Stack Overflow. You can find a lot of people that answer questions. So that's always good for an open source project like that.
So what does your back end look like? Did you also program the back end?
Yeah, so that actually took the most of time, and is still taking the most of the time. So the backend is in Golang, is spread through 7 microservices. So one is for payment, one is to deal with the numbers, so to buy numbers, to remove numbers, another is to decide the prices. So HoxFon gives you real-time prices for the call before, during, and after the call. And it gives you real-time prices for the numbers. So the service basically takes every day, flashes the stale currency value, gets new currency exchange, and provide answer for questions, API questions. For example, how much does it cost to get a Californian landline, or how much do I pay to get a Hong Kong mobile, or how much does it cost me to have 20 minutes conversation from Germany to Italy? So all these questions are taken care of the price service. What else? The main one is the API, which is basically a big dispatcher on top of it, and then decides what to connect, which service to connect. Everything right now is on AWS. I'm using Docker container with ECS. So ECS is basically an AWS service which allows you to let them taking care of your microservices infrastructure. It's that took a quite a long for me to implement, but I think I'm really pleased with the result now. So there are 2 machines right now, and they just share the load of the requests. So 2 machines mostly for redundancy, and it's everything works very well. So the backend is quite big. And for Twilio specifically, what you really need to do, what happens is that Twilio receives, when somebody makes a call, either an outbound call or an inbound call, what happens is that, first of all, you have to configure Twilio. You have to configure all your numbers to know what to do when they receive either a call or an SMS. And the configuration leads to call your server at some point. So you need to make sure the service is up and running all the time to instruct Twilio what to do with that call. The call can be rejected, can be connected to somebody else. But you can do various things. For example, you can decide at that point. You can decide if you want to record the call. You can decide if you want to bounce it, or you can even start a series of multiple connections. For example, you can say, try the first number, try to connect this call to my office, then try to connect this call to my home. And the backend, the flexibility of Twilio all resides on the customer implementations. And I think that's part of, that's also influenced a lot of success. So basically, it's up to your backend decide what to do with these calls that comes in, and you have 100% flexibility.
So I guess did you choose Go because of speed, or did you kind of just like the way that Go works?
Well, I had experience with Node.js, backend in Node.js in my previous job, and that eventually that was good for speed. That was good for to have to reason about one programming language. But eventually, I think I will not make another backend in Node.js. Reasons are multiples. I think the biggest one for me is peace of mind. So, no, I mean, JavaScript as a language doesn't have much of a strong typing and static check. So that was always a problem for us, where on the middle of the night a server decided to go down. You don't really know why, and then you find out that somebody put a typo or passed an object where it was supposed to get a string. Eventually, we start looking to other languages to build these microservices in my previous company, and I saw that was a very good way to design your backend, and then I decided to base my whole company on that concept. I think I really like the fact that Go it's strong typed, and you have to compile everything you write, but the compilation takes sometimes maximum 5 seconds. So that really doesn't slow you down. It's not really a compilation of C, which might take minutes to complete. That's a very good concept. The other good thing is I think Go is a perfect fit for microservices, because what Go produces is one binary. So in my example, for the price microservices, that can every time I do a change, my make file builds one file, and with that one file, I can just ship that into a container, and doesn't really take a lot of dependencies, and that one file will work forever because it's strongly typed, and because it's meant to do it. It doesn't have many dependencies, which is a problem for NPM, for example. If all of a sudden NPM is down, you can't deploy unless you have your own private cache registry. And I think everybody that would develop with Node.js in the backend can see every now and then the CI or Travis or Circle fails because it cannot reach NPM, and that is one thing. The second thing is every time you run a test, you can see the time. So for us, the time to run a test in Node.js was more or less 4 or 5 minutes, just because I need to install all the dependencies, then run on the test. The equivalent in Go, it's, 10 seconds maximum. So you really start seeing speed of development. And then I think is a really pleasant language to work with, and doesn't really take a big learning curve. On top of that, you can, if you develop APIs, you can take advantage of multi-core servers, which Node.js doesn't, and that is also very nice.
Just out of curiosity, how long did it take to kind of pick up Go as a language and actually start being productive with it?
So I think from the first time I saw a function returning 2 parameters, and I was shocked, to the point where I could actually build my own package and ship it to production without fear, I think it took more or less a month. So
well, that's not bad at all.
It's really not. Talking of it, a month meaning that you don't do anything else. You just concentrate on the project. So I think overall, a lot of things in Go, they just make sense. They just make really a lot of sense. Another thing I really like is that it's very opinionated language. So, for example, the test library is built within the Go binary. The benchmark library are shipped within the Go library. Now they're shipping formatting features like string and currencies, and those are things that on Node.js comes from the community. And then you see the fragmentation, and you see a lot of debates which one is the best way. I think what is nice about Go is that the core community decided what was the best test framework, what was the best benchmark. So you can rely on that, and that is used by very experienced people, very large companies, and it's a proof of it's a guarantee for stability. So that in that way, somebody new, it doesn't have to make a lot of choices for the test framework and the concurrency library to use. Everything is pretty much idiomatic. So there are right way to do things, and anybody just talk about this. Also, when you start looking to tutorials or looking at documentation, there's always one way to do. There's always the best way to do the thing, and all discussion converge to that way. So you learn very fast because there's not much space for conflict.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's one of the problems with JavaScript, or one of the complaints I think a lot of people have with JavaScript. There are a lot of different ways to do things, and it would be nice to have something like that in JavaScript, to be completely honest. So, so I guess I have a couple of questions. First would be, if you want to implement calling in React Native right now, what options do you have other than Twilio, or is Twilio kind of the main way to do this?
Depends. So you can depends on the level of quality and the level of service you want to provide. The obvious alternative is to use WebRTC to make calls and videos, which, if you go to that direction, you can either use I think there is a React Native library for WebRTC which is completely independent. So you have your own server that gives the stance to the client, and the client communicates to each other. Or you can again use Twilio WebRTC for that, or I believe you can use a number of players for that. But and that is a choice you can have. For example, if you just want to make a call over the internet, or you want to make a video call, and you don't particularly care of people be able to call each other without the internet. So I think that is the cheapest, and on top of that, you want a free service. That is the way I will go. But not to forget that with a free service comes anything can happen. It's up to you to generate the stance and to connect the people. And the quality of the line is you go to the main internet. So if you are subject to a very laggy line, that will be affect your calls and your videos. So I think if you rather want a professional service where the calls are actually high quality and they go to dedicate SIP trunking, which doesn't really interfere with the internet, I think there are a few competitors of Twilio. The choice really goes down to ease of integration and APIs and availability of numbers throughout the whole globe. So I think there are a couple of companies here in London as well. I think one is called Nexmo. I can't remember the name of the other, but they try to offer basically what's in a small scale what Twilio is offering, and it works very well as long as you stay in the country. For example, if you have a UK-based business which wants just to connect phone numbers in UK, and that's perfect. But as soon as you want to reach out on a customer base that needs to make international calls, and they want a premium service, and they're willing to pay for that, I think still today, I think Twilio is the best is your best choice.
So if someone did want to implement Twilio, what all do they need to do other than just using the library to kind of get it up and running with React Native?
Well, so if somebody is very new to Twilio, I suggest just follow the tutorials that Twilio gives out, and they give out also example application which you could download and install via Android Studio via Xcode. And if you want to do a native library or if you want to do a native application with Twilio and you're completely new to Twilio, I think you should really start with making work the example they gave you, because that involves understanding how all the call is managed. And that will require you to set up a small server, or in alternative, you could even have Twilio to manage your XML files to have the response for the calls. But eventually, you will find that you will need to make anything more complex. You will need your own server. But the tutorials on Twilio official website and GitHub repositories are really good in that sense. And eventually, yeah, when you understood that, it's quite easy to port all you've done into React Native, and the server will run anyway, so you don't need to change anything. What you will need to change is the SDK implementation. So you can use the library, you can use HoxFon, Twilio, React Native Twilio programmable voice, and install either Android, iOS, or both. And I think at that point, having the server already configured to work with Twilio official native SDKs, you won't have much to do apart from the React Native the JavaScript bindings. You will have bindings to start a call, to hand the call, and to initialize the tokens. So I think yeah, I mean, for people to start afresh, I think one of the biggest gotchas is understand how Twilio use tokens and understand how the session is started and how what's the expiration, and these things eventually are, I think these are the most difficult part, but that's about it. The rest of it is, I think eventually it makes sense the way they do things. It really does. So yeah, I would suggest start with the official documentation to set up your example application native and make that work. And also, if you have problems with that, the support team is exceptional, so they will answer very fast. So if you manage to get that working, the step to bring that bring that telephone call experience to React Native is very, very easy.
So is there anything else you'd like to kind of discuss before we start wrapping it up?
No, I think it's good. It's been a very good half an hour conversation. I think if I have to give one example of people that start writing React and React Native right now, maybe if I can give an advice which I learned is will be very, very useful to start as well flow type everything you do, and start using the tools that well nowadays luckily we have, like ESLint and the flow type, and even if you don't have to flow type the entire code base, even if you start just saying, look, this function accepts a string and a number, that will be a good start. And it's almost like unit test. Even one test is better than zero. So I think on the long run, these 5 seconds you spend to define your function type, I think you will really benefit on it of this in terms of time you save for bugs, time you save for even before you. So if you want to avoid all those red screen from React Native, what I end up doing now is I always run the linter and the flow type before I reload everything. And that actually, I haven't seen red screen very often now. I mean, obviously you do, but it's much better to have the terminal tell you what you've done wrong rather than have the simulator tell that. I think that would be the number one advice I could give anybody.
I think a lot of people would like to get into doing some type of voice stuff, and I think this will be a good resource for them to come back to. Yeah,
that will be amazing. And also, I'm in strict contact with the guy at Twilio native team, the guys that developed the SDKs. A couple of occasions they also promised me to help with the library, but I never saw them. But what they do, they really help me out. Every time I ask something, doesn't matter if it's a dumb question, they really try their best to help me. So it's I think eventually, but this library should really be managed by them. To be honest with you.
Yeah, they should. It seems like they should be handling the React Native implementation because React Native is so popular now.
Yeah, as a company, I mean, talking for myself, as a company, yes, there's HoxFon name on the library, and that's good for a little bit of publicity. But on the long run, the company, I shouldn't really manage something for Twilio, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, totally.
So hopefully React Native is big. So I think since the IPO, a lot of choices are onto enterprise based. It sounds a little bit absurd, but talking about Twilio, because has been a development company has been a community company for so long. But by absurd, I think if you had a big bank like ING that go and ask Twilio how to integrate React Native, they will jump on the project today. You know what I mean? Because I got a feeling that nowadays a lot of choices are kind of moved by sales, by big companies, which is inevitable after company goes public, I guess. But it's it's kind of reality, I think.
Okay, so I guess we'll go ahead and get to the picks now. Fabrizio, do you have any picks?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to broaden up your vision a little bit, I think ReasonML and the work that is going through that new language and that new framework, I think is something to look out for. I think it's very interesting what the folks at Facebook have been putting together. I mean, here in London, for example, there was the first ReasonML meetup not very far away from now, I think a month ago, and that went very well. So that is something I will definitely keep an eye on, and who knows, maybe in 5 years' time we will all develop on Occam.
Cool. Yeah, we did an episode on Reason, and it will be released actually in just a few days if you want to check it out, Fabrizio.
Nice. Very good.
I have 2 picks. The first one is React primitives. And I just kind of began using these after leaving Chain React and hearing Leland's talk, and it's something I've been wanting to check out. And it's pretty interesting. So I think I'm going to be using React primitives to build some of my open source stuff so I can extend it to the web. But basically, if you haven't heard or you don't know what React primitives are, it's basically a way it's a library actually from Leland Richardson, and you can import components from React primitives as opposed to importing from React Native. And you have things like Vue and text and things like that. But instead of just working on iOS and Android, they actually work across 3 different targets. My second pick is React Native EU, and that's the React Native conference in Poland in September. And that's coming up close. So there's still a lot of tickets available. It should be a really fun conference. If you're in Europe, or even if you're in the US and you'd like to visit Europe or anywhere in the world and you've never been to Poland, then I would definitely recommend checking it out. The tickets are fairly reasonable. So it seems like to be an affordable conference to go to. Okay, well, Fabrizio, thanks for coming on the show today.
No, thank you very much for having me.
We definitely enjoyed having you. We look forward to keeping in touch and maybe discussing something along these lines in the future.
Yeah, anytime.
All right, well, that wraps up episode 71 of React Native Radio. Thanks for listening, and we'll see everyone next week.